Hi, I am Justin Paperny with White Collar Advice, and I'm so grateful that you're with me today and you're giving me your time, which can be your most valuable asset. I know when dealing with your case, you're either moving forward or backwards, and my goal is to help you move forward to get a better sentence, help create a new business, overcome the obstacles of your conviction. I'm going to do the absolute best that I can. Today, I'm going to talk about not the first day in prison, which has been covered. I even filmed a video about the second day in prison. I promise not to film a video of every day of my federal prison sentence, but today I'm going to touch on a video, my last day in federal prison. And I joke every now and again, it's actually not a joke until my marketing team says get it together. I joke sometimes that my videos are too long, that I struggle to wrap it up. So today I'm going to try to keep it to 15 minutes or less. I have my trusted iPhone stopwatch in front of me, and I actually do need to wrap it up because as soon as I'm done, I'm going to fight terrible Los Angeles traffic and get to the business school at USC to lecture. So let me jump right into this video on my last day in federal prison. And I had the idea for this video because, well, I lectured at the Marshall School of Business last Friday, and I shared my lessons from prison story. And one of the questions from the students, they were intrigued by my prison routine, and specifically a comment that I made during my lecture, which was the two scariest days of prison are your first day and your last day. And some of the students were like, that seems really crazy that it would be scary on your last day. And I reminded them of the obstacles that await convicted felons, the obstacles that are in front of any white collar defendant. And if not prepared, the struggle can be harder than it needs to be. So that's when I got into this discussion of my last day in prison, which I'm going to touch on today. So I actually wrote a blog this morning. I may use this a little bit as a key. This is a little bit what I mentioned in class, but I'm going to jump right in. I wrote in this blog sort of like, wow, it's over, now what? As so many of you know, fighting your case can take years. In my case, it was 3.5 years. I've had clients it's taken them 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Even a year can feel like forever. So I mentioned in my lecture at USC that initially when I surrendered to prison, my friends were concerned, are you okay? Are you safe? What's happening? What's it like here? And once they saw that I was fine and progressing, towards the middle of my term, they were like totally comfortable, totally at ease with visitation. And then towards the end, when I was getting ready to go home, they asked the question, okay, dude, now what? In other words, what are you going to do when you come home? And so many of us don't think about it because we're so fixated on our case. Are we going to get the best sentence? Is our lawyer going to respond to us? Is the letter I write really going to influence the judge? Should I pursue the drug program? Etc. So it's very tough to think about, wow, I'm actually home and I'm now on the other side. But I do want to talk about what my last day in federal prison was like. And well, leading up to that last day, I was a little distracted the last few weeks because you're so consumed with your release. I wrote a blog, it's kind of called like short-termitis, right? Where I couldn't focus on anything because I was consumed with the fact that like, wow, I'm going to be home. And it really hit me on that last day when I got up at about 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, you never really go to sleep, right? So you know they're going to come and get you about 3 or 4 in the morning, process you out. Your loved ones at Taft Federal Prison Camp pick you up at the low where you get dropped off. So you don't really go to sleep, you say goodbyes. But in my case, I spent a lot of time alone in prison and certainly did during my last day in prison. At around 1 a.m. or so, I remember saying goodbye to my good friend, Michael Santos, and then I sat for several hours alone in the quiet room. And I remember sitting there just thinking like, I can't believe it's over. I can't believe that I'm going home. I just couldn't wrap my arms around the fact that I was going to be going free, as quasi-free as it might have felt going to the halfway house, but no longer in prison. I couldn't comprehend it, and I just kept saying, well, I'm leaving. I'm not standing for count today, and I'm not going to do my prison job. And I had so much time alone that I was almost, even people that were saying goodbye, I was in such space I couldn't really fathom what was coming. And I was only there for, a year or so. So imagine prisoners that are there for a longer period of time. For me, I was always consumed with the now what. So as I sat alone in that quiet room in dorm D at Taft Camp, I did some reflecting on my prison term. And these are some things that I thought about my last day in prison. I might not have thought about it exactly this way, but these are all the things that were running through my mind. And I want to convey it to you, not because you necessarily have interest in my life, but rather I hope that when you get to that last day in prison, which is coming, when your friends ask you, now what, that you are prepared to respond appropriately with a plan. And frankly, that plan should include what you do on the inside in prison. And I hope you reach the last day of your prison sentence, as I did, a little better, a little stronger, a little more equipped to deal with the obstacles that await all of us. So number one, last day in federal prison, embracing the process, not just the end. I wrote, as I sat in that quiet room hours before I was released, I thought about how I used my time in prison. More specifically, I realized that as a younger man, I was fixated on the end game. How much will I make on this deal? What did I have to say to close a deal? The ends justified the means. That was a big problem when I was a securities broker. I didn't pay so much attention to my behavior or what I had to do to close a deal. I was obsessed and fixated on the end game, and that's part of the reason that I went to prison. I lacked character. So in prison, I worked daily to endure the struggle, embrace the process, whether it was exercising or writing, and not just so fixated or obsessed with an end. And that made the days go much faster because I was pursuing specific and measurable goals. So I encourage all of you, I know you might want to get in shape, and I know you might want to write a book and build a new business. Just don't be so fixated on the weight loss or the writing of the book or the completed product, but the struggle along the way. Without that, on down days, you won't continue, and you won't be aware enough to pivot if things aren't working out. So I thought about that, how I came to love the process while in prison. Number two, reverse engineering. There are so many good men in prison who are onto so many great ideas, but sometimes they don't know when to pivot. And something that helped me that I got my release date really, really early into my prison term. So I knew exactly when I was going to be releasing. And I established early on what my goals were. So when I thought about leaving prison, I had my book in hand. I felt fitter. I had a box of letters that I had received from people who read my blog. So I had all of these things that were specific and measurable that in my mind I had made progress. And I did that by reverse engineering, which is something I encourage all of you to do throughout your prison term. So in other words, let's just say you have a release date a year out, and 6 months in you want to be 40 pounds lighter. Well, then you begin to get an idea of where you need to be 3 months out, and 60 days out, and 30 days out. So I did that with respect to my running and my blogs and the growing of my network, and just every goal, every specific goal that I had, even speaking. I began to speak in prison, and that was a stepping stone towards speaking immediately upon my release to audiences across America. So reverse engineer your way backwards. And if you do that, you'll know exactly where you need to be along the way. Something I thought about my last day in prison, challenging haters and staying positive. I'm not going to say that people hated me in prison. I had a lot of friends there, but I will tell you that there were people who thought my routine and what I was hoping to do was really crazy. And as I wrote in Lessons from Prison, misery loves company. And I felt like people were negative on purpose. And many of them were nice. For example, my bunkie, with whom I liked very, very much, he was very funny. He was in prison for a tax crime. The day I got there, he said, your prison term is like a whole cake. And every day there'll be fewer pieces to the cake, and eventually, there'll be crumbs, and you'll go home. So like 3 months into my prison terms, he'd say half cake. And then, quarter cake. And then like the last 3 months, all he'd do is walk by and he'd say, crumbs, you have crumbs left. And then like the final day, he'd say, there's no crumbs left, you go home. So, very, very nice, outgoing, affable guy. But when he'd see my blog, he'd say, you're crazy. Why are you writing about facilitating a Ponzi scheme? What the hell are you doing? And I realized pretty quickly that if I was going to do anything great, I had to stop being concerned with what people think. I was respectful. I was very polite. I was not rude. I did not have altercations in prison. I did not have disciplinary infractions. I did things the right way, but it doesn't mean that there were some people that were hating on me and didn't like that I was getting, mail from people reading my blog. And there were people that didn't think that because I only served 18 months that I'd be qualified to be a prison consultant, or worse, people said because I'm convicted of a fraud that there's no way I should be a corporate speaker on ethics and travel the country as I said I would. People thought I was insane. Challenge haters, stay positive, which can be hard in a very hopeless environment. Taking it home, number 4. On that last day in prison, I challenged myself to make sure that the work habit that I had redeveloped in prison followed me home. It's very easy to establish these goals in prison and do them because you're in a bubble. And I thought about that on my last day in prison. You're 60 yards from the track. You're 40 yards from the chow hall. Everything that you need to live is inside of a 4x4 locker. Then you go home and you're in front of temptation. It's very easy to say you're going to be ethical and fair in prison, when all of your bills are met and all of your needs are taken care of, it's sort of like what I'll tell the students this afternoon. It's very easy to say you'll do the right thing when faced with a dilemma when your parents may be paying your college, or you don't have to face the consequences of poor decisions. So I wanted to make sure that I would take home the character that I was building, the discipline to exercise, to diet well, to show such gratitude to my parents who endured so much as a result of my bad decisions. I didn't want to be opportunistic anymore. And it's a little embarrassing to have a YouTube channel. Is this a channel or a video? Whatever it's called, it's embarrassing to admit that in my 20s, I was opportunistic. I may work with those who I thought could advance my agenda, and that's no way to build a network. That's no way to be a man of integrity. So I wanted to take the philosophy and ethics and the mentoring from the inside and ensure that I took it, on the way out. That was so crucial. Number 5, embracing discomfort. There are aspects of confinement that are uncomfortable, and I remember my parents wondering if I can handle it. I didn't blame them. I was a coddled young man from Encino with a lot of privilege, and until this punch in the face from the system, I'd never endured any adversity, and admittedly, I really struggled to overcome it. So on that last day of prison, I appreciated that for the first time I had really overcome some discomfort on the inside. And looking back, it wasn't as bad as I thought. You go through lower lows in this experience. Like, you get indicted and you're like, it can't get any worse. And then it gets worse. Then you plead guilty and you're like, well, it can't get any worse than that. It's like, all right. Then you give hundreds of thousands of dollars to lawyers and you're like, well, it can't get any worse than that. And then all through that, you're working and doing volunteer work and getting character reference letters. And it's like, oh, will this thing ever end? Well, guess what? It will end. And on my last day in prison, I was proud of myself for finally embracing some discomfort rather than running and cowering and putting my head in the sand like an ostrich, like too many good people do. I finally took a punch in the face and I got up and I was empowered. Number 6, and if some of these are repetitive, forgive me. Last day in federal prison, forming good habits. I think it's awesome you're watching my videos. I think it's awesome you get my book. It's free, and I think it's I hope it helps you. I really does, but I really do. Good habits are the key to lasting change. The reason I had a successful prison term was because I created good habits and I implemented them every single day. You might find value in this video or my blog, but if you don't take the strategies to heart, I haven't done my job well. You shouldn't come back. You should dislike this video. Don't dislike the video, because my mom actually comes and checks out likes and stuff, and I don't need her. I don't need her to see it. If you don't like it, don't dislike it. But if you don't find value in it, you shouldn't come back. There are other options, I suppose. Other people that might be able to guide you. This is my style, my company, the way that I teach. If you don't form good habits, like implementing what I teach, then there's nothing good that's going to come from this. So take the information, implement it. Some of it may be hard, some of it may be not. You need discipline, you need to form good habits. Just don't come here, watch, leave, and do nothing with it. If that's the case, I haven't done my job. I formed really good habits in prison that hopefully I still carry them through today. Number 7, spend time with the right people. I'm very grateful that I already know this is going to go longer than 15 minutes, but that's the way it goes. Spend time with the right people. It's a big deal in prison. There are cliques in prison, and it's very easy to immerse yourself with the wrong group. People that are negative, that complain. On the flip side, there are people who are very positive and outgoing, who want to help you and who really want to build something. So I was fortunate at Taft Federal Prison Camp to form friendships with the right people who had similar values, who had similar goals. There's so much negativity in that environment that on that last day, it might have only been a few people that I said goodbye to, or a few people that I would really miss. But that small group of Michael Santos and Andrew Alchek and others really played such a huge role, and I was so appreciative on that last day. I was so appreciative as I worked my way actually from the quiet room back to my cubicle while my bunkie was sleeping, and I just sat there for hours thinking about all of these things, knowing that eventually the guard was going to walk down the hall and say, Paperny, it's time to go, as I had my box of belongings with my books, and I didn't take much home other than some books and the lessons that I learned, and I'll just never forget it. Moving on, not following the same path of everyone else. There's a great book called David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell, And in that book, he talks about becoming an underdog. Something that I embraced early in my prison term and reminded myself on in my last day in federal prison was that I was really now an underdog. And that if I was going to try to go toe to toe with other executives who don't have a conviction, who don't have a sullied reputation, who don't have so many of the things that accompany this conviction, that I would never succeed. I cannot go, if you have you cannot go toe to toe with people. You have to learn to think differently. So one, I didn't follow the path, and my life would be harder because I'm a felon. It's very a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because you're a felon, things are going to be harder, and we sort of work our way into that outcome. I saw too much of that in prison. Part of the reason people say, why are you working hard? It doesn't matter. You're a felon. No one's going to hire you. You can't get a license. Why are you writing a book? Why are you talking about ethics? You're a convicted felon. Do you not see the disconnect? Ethics, felon, ethics. It's like, yes, I get it, but I'm going to form my own path. I'm going to try to do something different that I think will provide value and potentially sustain my family. And in a later video, I'll get into how hard I worked when I came home, not for money, but just to build, to see if I was any good. So I say to you, you're underdogs. You have to think differently. And in that Malcolm Gladwell book, David and Goliath, he talked about, forgive me if I get the data wrong, but like over the last 200 years, a third of world wars have been won by the underdog. Why? They didn't go toe to toe. They came up with alternative strategies, differing ways to fight, and they won. If you're a convicted felon, think like an underdog, embrace your story, tell it, go down your own path. The more crazier people tell you are, more insane they say you are, you're probably onto something. Number 9, filtering advice. What did I write? In federal prison, I filtered all advice that came my way and confirmed if the person sharing it was qualified to do so. In fact, on the last day in prison, my bunkie, who called me crazy for writing a blog, suddenly told me that it was a great idea. Look, whether it was a good idea in his opinion or a bad idea, he was not in a position to offer me any advice. I want to learn from those who have done it. I want to learn from those who have a documented history of success. Just because I have a YouTube video doesn't mean that I'm the right person to help you. There should be evidence that you want to track. There should be data that you can compile, people with whom you could speak. If you were thinking of hiring me, I'd have you on the phone with 5 to 10 clients to confirm if I do what I say I do. Well, in prison, I essentially did the same thing. If somebody offered me advice, I filtered it and I'd kick out stuff that was totally useless. And I beg all of you to do exactly the same thing. Just because someone gives you advice, it may be good intentioned, it doesn't mean that it's right for you. Wow, that's actually it. So I'm going to wrap up. In fact, I don't even know how to wrap up. Do I say good morning? Do I say good night? Do I push the button? Let me close this way. At some point, the end of the journey is coming. At some point, you're going to be sitting there, as I did, in a quiet room or in your cubicle, thinking, my God, this is behind me. I have fought my case for so long. This is all I've known. I've put people that I love through so much. I beg you to ask yourself, are you worthy of the love they're giving you? Are you worthy of the love and support they have shown you? Are you prepared? Are you prepared to answer the question when your friends visit you or email you? Are you prepared to answer the question, now what? I hope that all of you are prepared to answer that question as I was. I hope that all of you are prepared to articulate in a clear fashion what your plans are for more productive post-prison life. And if you do, well, it can be wonderful. It can be better than ever with a felony conviction. It sounds crazy. You'll have a sense of perspective, develop tolerance you never thought existed. I'm happier than I ever was. I'm not insane. I'm not saying I'm glad I went to jail, but I'm so grateful I learned some valuable lessons. And I'm so grateful on that last day in prison, rather than being scared to death about what awaited me, or wondering if I should have turned down the halfway house because I wasn't ready to go home. I was ready. And I had these lessons in my mind, and I wanted to take 15 or 20 minutes to articulate them to you. Again, I'm really grateful you allow me to teach you. I'm really grateful you give me your time and how busy you are. And I love what I do, and I hope you find value in it. I wish you all the best and you reach the other side successfully and happy and a little better than when you went in. I'm off to USC to teach. I'll be back soon. Bye-bye.